Hello! Hello!
Hi.
Hello, and welcome to this interesting stream. My name is John, and I am joined by Jeff.
Don't want to say interesting stream. You've got to be interesting.
We've got
Dang
to
it.
be interesting,
I'll leave.
guys.
Uh,
By Richard,
Hello.
and by Ben.
hello there.
And we've just had a resub from Ben. Yay, it's true! Dreams can come true, or, well, at least become other things. Like nightmares, yes, happy nightmares, that dance with ponies and sing Triffle while fighting a sponge. Ah, the beauty, ah, the wonder, ah, the... What am I saying? Who are you? Where am I? Who? Why is who? Where equals chocolate? All this and more. Now. No. Wait. Now. Dang it. Okay, one more try. Now! Shoot, never mind. Hello, everyone!
My
if you're ready, that's
favourite thing
interesting.
about it.
Ben has been subscribed for 26 months. Yay!
Eh,
That's not our usual, like, welcome back to the channel thing. It's not just like, Ben has resubscribed for 26 months.
You
Yay.
get very playful.
Welcome to the round table. Welcome back and take your seat at the round table. This is...
John is a problem. Mine's square.
This is going to be an interesting stream because this is the sort of stream we don't normally do. It's a thing that I'd like to do more of and just sort of talk about D&D stuff in sort of an open format. But we don't. So we had a free weekend. This would have been the first D&D game of the year. It would have been a Rime of the Frost Maiden game. But I'm busy the weekend that the next one would be, so we'd come back, do a game after a month off, have another month off, and then have to jump back into it again. And that felt weird. So I thought this would be a good way to use up this evening, and then Richard's going to run a thing the weekend that I'm not away. I'm not away. I am away, and I'm not here. And then we'll be back for Rime of the Frost Maiden in February. So this is going to be a chance for us to look at the Christmas crossover we've just done, Reign of the Whispered One, to discuss how that came to be, to talk about the references that were there if people saw them, or point them out if people didn't. To talk about encounters
Gonna be
that
the second one.
to point out and talk about encounters that could have happened, because there were definitely a few things that were sort of the planned, that the characters went round or went a different way, or just the way that things happened went a bit differently. And then I've got a little scene I'd like to do towards the end that's going to introduce some new lore into sort of the prime timeline, as it were.
Okay.
I thought we were calling it the sacred timeline these days.
I mean, some people can call it the sacred timeline.
For copyright reasons, I can't.
For non-being the evil people that rule the timeline, I'm going to go with the prime timeline. Although that does sound like it's Amazon Prime timeline.
I was
That's
going to say,
not quite right.
That's just
I would
more
go with
lawsuits we're
standard.
going to get.
I'll go with the standard one. It is
The
the
golden timeline.
And so long as you don't think of showers, that'll be fine.
We're going to introduce a little bit of lore to Earth 1 of the FBF cinematic universe. Only Earth 1 because it was the first one, not because it's better than any others.
Mhm.
Oh, you know.
So, I don't really know where to begin with this. Shall I start at the beginning?
I thought we already
Very
done
good
the
place.
intro.
Very good place to start.
I'll begin at the beginning and I'll tell the story of how the plot line came up. And then I'll go through each of the we can go through each of the 4 episodes. If you guys in the chat have questions, I've got chat open in several places. So drop questions into the chat, and if they are a question that I can answer without spoiling something from the prime timeline, the golden timeline, I will answer questions.
Alright.
So Vecna. Let's start with that, because Vecna was really where this all started.
I didn't know I was even involved.
Okay, yeah. Can I start? Can I kick off?
Yeah, go ahead.
Is this the same Vecna from as we saw in a popular web series, or is it a different iteration of Vecna?
This is a different iteration of Vecna to the Vecna that was seen in popular web series Critical Role. This is the FBF verse version of Vecna. Basically, in the middle of this year, about June, July time, I was looking at Drive-Thru RPG. I had watched a video by Ginny D, who does cosplay and D&D advice, or started doing cosplay, now does an awful lot of D&D advice and some cosplay still, and some D&D advice in cosplay, so, you know, do what you love. And she was talking about a book titled the Best of Both Worlds. She was talking about a book titled The Adventurer's Domestic Guide, or The Domestic Guide for Adventurers, or something along those lines. And she had a discount code for Drive-Thru RPG that you could use to buy anything from Drive-Thru RPG, but sort of specifically the intent was, go buy this book, and also while you're there, if you buy other things, great. And so I looked at The Adventurer's Domestic Guide, and I quite liked it. It's an interesting one. It's all about setting up adventurers who have a home. And sort of they go out on adventures from a home base. Like, from... Rather than, like, we're wandering adventurers, wandering the countryside, they have a house. They live at home. They sortie out onto adventures and then go back home. And they specifically had a number of sort of subclasses that were devoted to adventurers that adventured with their families. And I picked that up. And at the same time, I saw a book, or 2 book series, that focused on a world where Vecna ruled. And I thought, that sounds interesting. I want to use that at some point. I don't know what point that will be. But I picked it up, and it was basically, one of them was sort of the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide. It described the world and the setting and how things were different, and basically how Vecna had come to be in charge of this world. And it was a world where the player characters had lost every single one of the main book adventures. I thought that
quite
was
a lot of adventures.
I thought that was really interesting. All of the 5th edition main book adventures that were out at the time, the player
you like-
characters
is
had
it-
lost.
Prince of the Apocalypse, Storm King's Thunder, Descent into Avernus, all that lot.
Yep. So it was specifically, it calls out Descent into Avernus, which we looked at with the third episode, Heldor's Gate. Basically, Baldur's Gate and Eltriel has vanished.
Can we get some new adventurers then? If they're losing all these campaigns, can we just get some new adventurers?
Yeah. Stanza has redeemed a stretch.
Oh, we're a camera stretch.
As I picked it up and I thought, that's interesting, I'll use that at some point. And around the same time, D&D Beyond released Vecna stats. Because Stranger Things had just been on and Vecna was in that. And people thought, hey, that Vecna's cool, let's fight him in our D&D games. And so D&D Beyond released the Vecna stat block, which was slightly tweaked by me to be the Vecna that you guys fought.
And not just a lab subject.
Um,
A lab one of lab subjects, or is it actually Vecna, or is it just
No, that's Vecna.
lab subject?
no,
Okay.
that is Vecna.
It does beg a question, though, considering that we're claiming that this is multiversal. Is this the Vecna from this verse, or is it the Vecna from a different verse?
I mean, the way that it works in that is that you have defeated a Vecna who was in a timeline. Vecna's still out there. Like,
That was the key part. It was the case of, does this
That does not
us defeating
mean-
Vecna? Does that mean that there could be another Vecna,
Yes.
which could be different from the Vecna that we've seen turning up at some
there could
point?
very well be,
It's a whole army of Vecnas. It'll be
There's
the
gonna be one with clown shoes.
in much the same way that sort of a Syriac at the end of Tomb of Annihilation is like, you've defeated me, oh no, disintegrate into dust. And then just like a week or so later, he reforms at his phylactery.
phylactery.
And it's just like, well, that was annoying. I'm not
You
gonna.
respawn in games, isn't it? You've got to go back,
Yeah,
you know.
I gotta pick my stuff up now.
Yeah, got to go back to the grave, start at the graveyard, go and get.
I'll get the broom.
But it basically says, like, he doesn't go after the characters again because he knows that they are very powerful, but he is immortal and patient. He's going to wait a couple of generations and then wipe out your families, you know, a few hundred years, 1,000 years down the line, because he's patient and he can wait around. And similarly, Vecna isn't just going to come straight back again and go, you fuckers, you killed me. Oh shit, you've done it again. Like, he's patient. He's going to be around a while.
But it's going to be like every 1,000 years or so. It's like the cousin you hate is going to come calling, and you just like kill him all over again.
Well, it's kind of how, like, you know, Link exists in Hyrule. Is just every 1,000 years or so, Ganondorf comes back and goes, now I will take the Triforce. Shit, the green guy's back again.
It's just how we
they're
say hello.
sacrificing a green child again. This is terrible.
This
We
is
have to
how we
pretend
say
to
hello.
fail again, right?
It's how we say hello in Hyrule.
Yeah.
One of these days is going to come across Lunk instead. I want to play that game. I want to play The Adventures of Lunk.
Long. So, shall we look at the specific adventures
Okay.
and the specifics? So, basically, yeah, 6 months or so ago, I had the idea. Vecna, doing a timey-wimey thing, has set out a world where he has won. It's sort of slightly inspired by sort of the Age of Ultron from the comics, where it's just like, we start and Vecna has won. How did that happen?
He had a gun.
And I didn't know. Writing the first episode, I was like, I don't know how this has happened. It's happened. They've got to get in there. And literally, I was talking to Ben. I don't know if Ben remembers this.
I remember multiple of our conversations.
But at Geek Retreat in Chelmsford,
yeah,
I had just bought the books of the Doomed Forgotten Realms. I was like, I'm going to run this for Christmas. There. And
I loved it already at that point, to be fair. The moment it was a case of, yeah, you're failed in your things. Yeah, excellent.
And I basically was talking to you and was like, wait, Warrington. And so, like, the whole goal of the first episode became, you get to this moment where you get to this, like, weird dimensional energy thing, and you find Warrington the Gif, who is a character that has appeared in several previous multiversal FBF D&D Christmas crossovers. As
one of these days, you are going to have to just play through Warrington's story. He's too much of a character now.
We only bring him out for Christmas, then we put him back in his box.
Yeah, he goes away for the rest of the year.
He's like the Mariah Carey. He's like the Mariah Carey of the D&D world.
No, this is the thing. Yeah, he goes and stays with Michael Bublé inside the cave.
Yeah, just a carbonite freezing room. There's Mariah Carey, Bublé, and Warrington the Gif. It's the three of them. It shares on space and cuts down the rent. So the first episode is basically the adventure that D&D Beyond put out. D&D put out an adventure titled Don't Say Vecna. And the whole thing was a tower that had been flung out of a world into limbo for studying Vecna when Vecna rose to power. And Vecna doesn't like people studying Vecna because he's the god of secrets. And so he yeeted the tower out of reality and sort of used it as a place to torture the people that had been studying him and keep secrets hidden away. And so sort of you as the heroes, you get in there, you fight a few things, you find this arm, you find this head, you find this eyeball, you fight your way up the tower. I mean, actually, there's a couple of things that you guys missed on the second level, partly because we sort of rushed you through it, partly because of some of the other things I'd added. So on that level, because Jeff, you were in that first session, weren't you?
Yes. This was the one where with the tower, and we ended up in a some sort of green room or like plant nursery where everything attacked us.
Yeah. So this was the first level of the tower where you had the library and you had the broken staff.
Yes, this is Milo stuff, wasn't it? Where
so yeah, it was
where you borrowed my message from Prince of the Apocalypse, if I remember rightly.
It was Milo stuff, and basically as the Milo, the Milo clone approached it, the staff merged back together and simultaneously played two different messages from two different timelines. One of which, the day after we recorded that session, Jeff, I went back and watched the VOD of the session where you put out that staff recording. And I had a note of that staff on a sticky note on my PC for like 3 months with the exact wording that you used, down to, and I think I can open that note again because I've closed it since, but I've got the notes list here. down to the point where I've got noted places you said or or paused or repeated words. The exact wording you used.
Fair, I more or less came up with that on the fly. That wasn't Milo, that was me.
Sometimes they end up being the best speeches.
I knew basically by the, yeah.
So basically the idea was the staff was sort of pulling these two different messages because the world was still in flux. And one of them was the Milo happily sealing the message away, having sort of semi-retired, sealing the message away, and sending the staff out to the world, to the next person to take it over. And the other was sort of the defeated Milo from this world or a world where the world had fallen. Speaking about Vecna taking over and the various things that he had seen. And yeah, when I knew that my idea for this was originally going to just be from the start, when I was thinking of the idea of a world where Vecna has taken over and the timelines have changed, my first thought was Milo, but entirely thief, no wizard. Borrowed, entirely fighter, not warlock, hasn't gone to Sparrow Falls, is completely different character. And then it was trying to think of different versions of every other player character that had existed for everyone else. And so it was things like, let's bring Keros back. There must be something interesting I can do for Ben. Your one took, of the people that of characters that got brought back, bringing back Safe took the longest to come up with. He was one of the last characters I built of the ones that were because obviously there are a couple of people like Richard, like Rogue, like Goat, who haven't been in the games for that long. And so it would either be a case of, well, it's Dax, but different. But we don't really know a lot about who Dax is just yet.
He's an enigma.
And then it's or it's another,
It's Dax, but his fingernails don't grow back.
Yeah.
He's got no teeth or fingernails or hair.
You say that whole sort of thing, but it's an enigma. Yeah, Enigma doesn't even come close to starting off with Safe, really.
But anyway, getting back to the library, you could have, if you had stated you were going to read the books in the library, you could have read the books in the library. You could have spent an hour reading the books and learnt Vecna was born on a world of Oerth. He was the son of a hedge witch, never knew his father. When he was young, his mother was exiled for practicing dark magic. Vecna was bound into servitude by an order of wizards that exiled his mother. One day he massacred the wizards. Over the course of 100 years, Vecna forged an empire on his home world. When his body started to fail him, he turned to dark powers and became a lich. He was betrayed. Surprising no one. Betrayer not named in the books. The battle that ensued between Vecna and his betrayer cost the Archlich his left hand and left eye. And he now traverses the multiverse for some reason. But also, if you started reading the books, whichever character started reading the books would have had to make a wisdom saving throw or be forced to continue reading the books and do nothing but reading the books and then praising Vecna.
Oh.
I mean, from that description, I thought you sounded all right. So,
We've all got our problems.
He's got a point.
Yeah,
He's got a point.
yeah,
He's got,
it's
he's
difficult
kinda got a
upbringing,
point.
and he's making the best,
He's kind of got a point.
Yeah, they're real page turners, Stanza. There was the botanical garden that was outside that we sort of looked out on a couple of times, and then I just was like, when we were getting towards the end of it, I was like, "There's nothing out there. Don't go out there." Like I one of the few times I DM fiated like, "Don't bother. It's a dead end."
That just makes us want to go out there even more.
If you had gone out there, you would hear the pleas of a deceased person that you loved and believe that they were in the tree in the middle of the garden. And then when you get within 5 feet of the tree or begin your return adjacent to it, the tree grabs you and you need to make a strength saving throw or be restrained by the branches of the tree, which cause you to take necrotic damage. And then ghouls start to come out of the grounds and start attacking you as you're stuck in there. And while you're in the tree, or while the tree is there, any attempts to bring the plant life in that garden back to life fail. No living plants can live in that courtyard in limbo. And if you had had any creatures with the plant subtype, they would take 5d10 necrotic damage at the start of any turn when they were in the courtyard.
Ooh.
Not good for magical plants. Speaking of not good things, you could go upstairs and find the fleshy mounds of
Yeah, we did that.
the fleshy mounds that had at one point been Bryn.
Oh,
Leshy
wow.
noises.
Um,
It's a leshy noise. Sorry, I'm getting distracted by stuff.
if you had read the book, I don't believe anybody read Bryn's journal, Jeff, did they?
Don't recall. Don't believe so. No. If would we have found out that would we have found out that the flesh mounds were Brim if we'd read the journal?
Yeah, I
Would
believe
it
so.
So we didn't because we would not have let that pass.
I have spent my years in solitude researching all the cruel things that threaten my realm to protect the people I love. But Vecna is not one of those cruel things. He promises life, an eternity of it, if only we lend ourselves to his wisdom. For my servitude he has promised me a great gift, a way for everyone I love to be together. So great is this gift that I shall take all of the realm into my warm embrace. Imagine a world that is one, a world that is me, is the evil thing you would have read in the journal, because obviously Bryn lost his mind.
So, at which point does this turn into? Because this sounds like it's turning into a Call of Cthulhu game.
I mean,
To be fair, with Vecna, yeah, you're probably not too far off.
if somebody had read that, the notes from D&D Beyond basically say that creature is targeted by a 9th level Dominate Monster spell from Vecna, and basically would turn against the party when you go and fight Vecna upstairs.
Ah, like perfectly timed trader.
Yeah.
Now I'm hearing all these things. I just got to say thank you very much for choosing a smarter character for me to play. We've gone through too many times where I've ended up playing against the players.
It would have also, like, for the sake of, you know, if that had happened, it would also have used up Vecna's once a day casting of Dominate Monster. So, like, regardless of whether you pass or fail the DC 22 Wisdom save.
Ooh. Yeah, Karos was not going to have fun with that.
But you got upstairs, and you found not Vecna, because in the D&D Beyond adventure, you get upstairs and you find Vecna, and you fight Vecna, and that's it. And like, so I chose a different monster for you to fight, Lord Seul, who was a mind flayer by any other name. A lot of the monsters you fought in this are from the upcoming book Flea Mortals from Matt Colville. So the voiceless talkers and the hulking brain, which you guys took out in a single round before it even got a chance to act.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
May I? Yeah, and I'm probably shooting myself in the foot here, but may I just do in the idea that they don't die until they at least had one turn?
I mean, I'd be very interested in that idea, given the number of times that you guys have murked things. But like,
I have a confession to make. I did start doing that towards the last few encounters in Prince of the Apocalypse.
but also,
So I know of, and yeah.
with that in mind, his whole the whole point of that hulking brain was just to soak up attacks so that the people behind him got a chance to act. Like, originally that was Lord Seul in the room on his own, and I was like, that's not going to be a good fight. They're going to just come in and kill him very quickly. Let's put some other things in here first. So the hulking brain was largely just the road bump that it was. It was meant to, be the muscle that you go, oh shit, we should beat that thing first.
I get the feeling it's supposed to last a bit longer than it did, though.
I mean, possibly it's not meant to go up in a fight against, like, 17th level... what were you, 15th? 17th?
15th, I think.
15th? Probably not meant to go up against a party of 15th level adventurers, one-on-one. But it did the job. It allowed Lord Seul to have a few turns and do some very nasty things he could do.
Right, to make cupcakes.
And then we move on to one of the sessions. One of the other sessions I have a lot less notes on. Rumble in the Jungle. This one was where I started to have the idea of what the timey-wimey change was going to be, where that came from. Because I was reading one of the adventures that you guys are doing. Not going to say which one. And it talks about the Netherese obelisks, and how Wizards of the Coast have been threading these obelisks throughout their previous adventures, including the one at the door to the Tomb of Annihilation.
Ah.
Yep.
And I was like, well, I'm sending people back there now, aren't I? And so that's why you guys went back to Chult. Was because I read this thing and went, oh, that's how Vecna changed the timeline.
I did love the little revisit to an old location as well. That was lovely.
So, yeah, you got back to Chult. Originally, I'd sort of put in that you were going to be about 5 minutes walking through the jungle, and then it just opened out into Omu, and then there were going to be the encounters. And then I just put that encounter in randomly with the dice roll as you walked there. The Tabaxi warrior that lies partially decayed in the corner of the gatehouse.
Yep.
I was kind of leaving that very open to what Tabaxi warrior that was. Whether that was a former player character from when we did Tomb of Annihilation, or whether that was one of the many Tabaxis that are actually just in Omu for you to encounter.
I was wondering one thing
Yes.
in that session. As we're walking through the woods,
Yes.
one of the first things which we came across was a wide opening with a skeletal figure dead in the center of it. And I know we ended up convincing as basically decide, no, we're going to leave that and go around it. What was that? Or was that actually turning into something at all? Or was it just literally random and we could have walked through without an issue?
So, I decided that I was going to have a random list of encounters for this one. And so what the actual encounters that came up in that session were going to be was a list of about 10 or so that I got from you roll the dice, I'll narrate the thing. That one was one I've used before and the group avoided it the first time. And you've now avoided it twice.
So you're not going to tell us in case we come across it a third time.
So
Keep
basically,
putting it in and hopefully.
basically,
someone has to trip over this.
the courtyard itself, which you'd got the very highest perception checks on, so you noticed everything about the courtyard that there was to notice. If you had gone into it, I'd basically taken the encounter that happens very deep in the Tomb of Annihilation and brought it out to the surface of you go into a corridor and anything that you're wearing that's non-magical, anything you're carrying that's not magical, immediately becomes brittle and disintegrates and vanishes.
Naked party again.
And so basically, yeah, it would have been a case of if somebody had said, I'm going to go in there, equipment falls off.
I very nearly did. I
Yeah.
remember I was pushing to go in there.
I was massively pushing the other direction.
You all
So-
about what's the actual job and duty and getting things done.
Because pretty much this doesn't help us, and it obviously looks like a trap. This is not where we're aiming. This is not where the orb is taking us. Let's go.
So
This is the
this-
thing. You literally put me in a position of playing a sensible character.
Yeah. The skeleton was an encounter that I'd originally written for In the Clutches of the Cult, when one of the groups in the Clutches of the Cult was making their way through the Shadowfell. You came across a skeleton at the side of the road, and it was just lying at the side of the road, like up against a tree a little bit away from the path. And it was just there, and you could have gone and investigated it. And you didn't. And then in this case, there was just the skeleton lying in the middle of the courtyard, and you kind of gone and looked at it, and you didn't. And basically, when I'd first, what I had seen prior to the In the Clutches of the Cult encounter in the thing was this clips of a film. I don't know what the film is. I don't know what the country of origin of the film is. But it was basically a warrior who had a suit of armor that basically moved them. And it had a spirit bound into this suit of armor that was he was fighting things and then the armor would move him. And basically you were going to get that sort of thing. This goop was going to come out of the bones and attach over the character that first disturbs the bones.
I remember having this conversation about that exact thing. You've shown me that clip. I remember it quite distinctly. Because we were talking about how, this is back playing the Tomb of Annihilation, how Ghoulie would take over. And effectively it would be that, and it's a fight to try and convince yourself out of it.
And so
and gain
basically,
control of yourself.
if somebody had gone in there, equipment falls off, they go up to the skeleton, new armor goes over them that's sort of like chitinous armor, that would be whatever the best suit of armor that character can wear +2, and would have granted them advantage on attack rolls. because basically they were having constantly, the armor would be redirecting them to make the best use of attacks. But there were a number of other encounters that you could have had on the way through Omu. You rolled the worst one. Literally the worst one, which was the fight with the undead King of Feathers.
Yeah. To be fair, that was a lot of fun.
The next encounter on there was the person who rolled the d20 would also roll a d6, and then it would start to rain. And the d6 determined whether it was a light drizzle, a heavy rain, or a full-on thunderstorm. And whether that affected future encounters or not, depending on how much it rained or not.
That would have been interesting.
Another encounter was you'd be walking along the road and you'd hear a loud rumbling croak that echoes over the path, and you see a Froggiamoth with a scrap of light green material sticking out the corner of its mouth that is suddenly very interested in the first living prey that it has seen passing through Omu in quite some time. Another encounter that you missed would have been as you were making your way through the flooded section of the town. You would have been shot at by an unseen archer. And if you stopped to confront the assailant, it was a undead bag of nails.
Oh.
Is that a character or an actual bag of nails that is somehow dead?
Bag of Nails is a tabaxi you meet in Tomb of Annihilation.
See, I've never played.
I was thinking that. I was thinking that myself.
I've not played Tomb of Annihilation, Prince of Japan. I've never played any of these. So when it was like, I sort of got there was some of these references, but then also there's references to your previous games, which I've also not played. So I was always like, trying to work out what was what.
So in Tomb of Annihilation, in Omu, you can you can bump into a old tabaxi hunter called Bag of Nails, who has come to Chult, who has come to Omu specifically, and is sort of on a I'm gonna die in a glorious way quest. And he initially sort of confronts the heroes in this encounter, in an encounter like this. He ambushes the heroes and tries to attack them, and they whittle his health down, and he gets to the point of death and is like, no, don't kill me. Like, he gives up on it and realizes actually, like, this isn't how I want to go out, and takes you back to his basement where he poisons you all.
Yep. Or tries to.
Or attempts to poison you all.
Yeah.
Whereupon you just kill him.
I just remember that one when it came down to purify food and water. No.
Ow, poop.
Yeah.
One of the other encounters that you missed, you could have rolled, was after passing through the flooded portion of the city, you get too close to one of the ruined shrines to the trickster gods that they worshipped in Omu, and a flare of magic comes out of it, and everybody would need to make a wisdom saving throw. And if they fail, they get to roll a d8. And on the d8, they either get turned into a beetle, a boar, a lion, or a zebra. For 1 hour, as if polymorphed.
I'm trying to think if any of those would actually come in handy. I mean, zebra maybe for the sake of running.
Zebra basically has the stats of a riding horse, so in theory you could have used them as a mount for a while.
And if you got the beetle, you just end up shoving it up the main villain and hope that you can get an Ant-Man versus Thanos situation.
And then the final encounter that you missed was one of the ones, like, I would have loved to have seen this encounter happen. Was basically, I was speaking to Michael and I was speaking to my brother about what are the encounters that I can have in Omu. And like, I've got this list of encounters, what's the last one? I need another one. And my brother, I believe, was along the lines of, well, you've got a timey-wimey plot. Can you do something timey-wimey? And in our going back and forth about discussing what timey-wiminess we could have, basically, you missed out on fighting the cyborg. There was an orc with cybernetic parts who was effectively a Shadowrun character, a Shadowrun street samurai, who had got stranded in time and was like going crazy because of lack of Wi-Fi signal.
Oh, wow. I love that even further if you're taking the orc from the Warhammer universe. But somehow its rules still apply and it's just baffled.
I mean, that would have just killed you all, so...
Yeah, but then Borrowed's new character would have got his laser gun back.
I mean, I don't know. Heck, Safe is kind of blue. That would sort of activate his believability.
Then the only other bit that I skipped out on in that is that originally I had written out and we skipped out on it basically because of the length of time it took the fight with the undead King of Feathers, is that when you defeated a Syriac, I had the mythic rules for a Syriac written out.
Okay.
And so basically, I'll read you the snippet of text that would have gone when you first defeat a Syriac. The body that was a Syriac crumbles, turning to dust along with his robe, staff, talisman, and crown. The dust swirls in midair, vaguely resembling a skull. A hollow, dry voice echoes. So this is what it has come to, then. Bow before true power, insects, and this will be swift. The dust begins to solidify in the form of a skull with 2 red rubies shining brightly in the eye sockets and 6 diamonds affixed where the teeth should be. And then basically round 2 of the fight is with a Demi-Lich, a Syriac.
You know, fair part is recently I was doing that whole the Lich Who Stole Christmas, and my big plan in case they managed to crush their way through it was effectively, the Lich is going to turn into a Demi-Lich and is going to affix itself above one of the I decided I was going to get it to come back with some Death Knights, and it would affix its head above the Death Knight, so becoming the head of the Death Knight. Oh god. No, that would have been cool.
So session 3. Were any of you in session 3?
No.
I may have been actually. What was that? What was that?
That was Heldor's Gate. I think you were late to it.
I was probably late.
I think you were late. I think you got there for the final sort of fight sequence. So Heldor's Gate came as like we need a 3rd act for this 4-act play. You know, you've got obviously the setup, we've got the go to Cholt and find out the timey-wimey thing there. Then question mark, and then obviously the final one is we fight Vecna. And defeat Vecna.
Yep.
So, for a while there was just question mark here. And then obviously you're fighting Vecna. the Sword of Kaz has to show up.
Oh, I do remember this one.
You outright you can't fight Vecna without the Sword of Kaz. It's you know.
It was the Sword of Kaz for now.
Yes. Well, I mean, for that session it was, yes.
When was that sword introduced, or was that just for this one?
Sword of Kaz is a long-running thing with Vecna, as he had a lieutenant who betrayed him by the name of Kaz the Bloody-Handed, and this was his sword, and it longs to kill the Lich Lord. So then I was looking, where do I put the sword? And there were a number of options. As I say, there's the entirety of the Forgotten Realms that have been twisted, so it could have gone to the Deserin Valley, which in this Vecna run world is effectively a hellscape ruin of the various elemental planes, as the cultists are sort of still fighting over it.
If Flower Power Team failed.
Yeah. You could have gone to Silvery Moon, which one of your characters came from. And in a prison in Silvery Moon is the essence of the Angel in Irons, Thera's Dune. Because Vecna basically released the Elder Elemental Eye and the Elder Princes, and then just went, nope. And put that to one side. We're not, you're not ruling this world. Sit here for a bit.
Oh, but I want to play.
But then I thought the obvious place for this to be is Heldor's Gate, which is basically Baldur's Gate. But instead of Baldur's Gate, Baldur's Gate's gone now. It's in Avernus. But that means the demons and devils have got sort of an entry point into the world. And the demons are using that, and the devils were looking at it and going, we can't just let them go. We've we're taking the blood war there. And so they followed, and they set up Heldor's Gate, and sort of a devilish ring of a city that is like, they vaguely know what a city is, and buildings that are vaguely spaced without the need for worry about humans occupying it. With a massive mile-wide sinkhole in the middle of town, which is where Baldur's Gate had stood. And hanging in the sky above the crater, piercing the clouds, is... what's her name? Zariel's Citadel. Which sort of looks like a sword piercing the sky as the blood war rages around it, and the demonic Ica just falls back into the crater of formerly Baldur's Gate. And so at the start of the session, the group needed to get onto the Citadel. I gave them 2 options, and then I gave them 1 option, of which one actually showed up. Partially, the one that showed up was showing up because I really wanted to play the character again. And partially, that character showed up because I had a cold at the time that lasted for months.
Cool,
and I didn't want to try and do the voice for Mad Madam Mimsy.
So instead we got Drake the Leprechaun.
So instead you got Drake. Drake, who is a character who's shown up previously in The Adventures of the Golden Tooth, who is a archfey. who's just sort of wandering the countryside going, this looks like fun, I'll get involved.
As you do.
As Archfays do. Doesn't quite
I've
understand human
I've never
customs.
wanted to smash a NPC's brains out so much in my life.
And you wouldn't be able to.
I
Although
wouldn't stop him from trying.
he might enjoy the experience and then sort of get up and put them back in again.
It's been a long time since I've had anyone do that to me.
I had noted that I remembered the description, which was he was effectively his appearance was Molly from Critical Role. Like, he was very much inspired by that character, and so he was a purple or light lavender-skinned tiefling with a lilting Irish accent and a long patchwork trench coat in fabulous shades of red, which he has now given to the Chupa clone. And he initially introduces himself as Drake Brokenpaw, a simple traveller to these lands.
Why is it whenever they say simple or traveller, you know it's...
Hi, I'm simple.
And asks what the characters would like and what they will give him to get it. He would also refer to himself at various points by other names: Lysander Nightpaw, the Traveller, Stormfeather. He was fairly fluid with names because none of them were his real one. He would have taken offence, and nobody went with one of the ways that I thought they might confront him. He would have taken offence if they assumed he was a devil. Because he isn't. The other character was a small, scarred imp with a high-pitched, screechy voice by the name of Mad Mimsy, who would have given you access to a flying infernal engine.
Ooh.
Which would have allowed them to fly up to the Citadel and crash into the first room that they were going to enter, rather than the silently entering it as they did. But they would also need to have placed a soul coin in the engine, which takes a drain on the character, because it is effectively sacrificing a eternal soul to get the engine going. And so beyond that, you pretty much encountered everything in that adventure. For the sake of those who didn't hear it and don't know what the Sword of Vecna does, it's a big list. Sorry, the Sword of Kaz. Not the Sword of Vecna. The Sword of Vecna fighting. It's a +3 longsword.
Nice.
That scores a critical hit on a 19 or 20. And deals 2d10 slashing damage to the undead. Those are the good bits. If you don't bathe the Sword of Kaz in blood a minute after you draw it, or within a minute of drawing it, the wielder needs to take a DC 15 charisma saving throw. If they successfully save, they take 3d6 psychic damage as the sword tries to convince them to drown it in blood. If they fail to save, they are dominated by the sword, as per the Dominate Monster spell. and the sword demands that it be bathed in blood. How they bathe it in blood is up to their interpretation. Which would have been interesting if the Sword of Kaz had been drawn and out for longer than a minute, say when you were fighting a statue that doesn't have blood. Because that's either, drown it in blood, bathe it in blood. Well, I'm either going to stab one of the other characters, or I've got to stab myself. It also gains the following random properties. Or these are the random properties I drew for it.
Okay.
In addition to the other spells that it can cast... while the sword... Sorry. Spirit of Kaz. While the sword is on your body, or on your person, you get to add a d10 to your initiative at the start of combat. In addition, when you use an action to attack with a sword, you can transfer some of the +3 from your attack bonus to your armor class. Some or all of it can move, but it will stay that way until the start of your next turn. You can also use the sword to cast Cool Lightning, Divine Word, or Finger of Death. And then the random spells I rolled were Crown of Madness and Synaptic Static. However, while he was attuned to the sword, Stolen lost his sense of smell. That was a minor bad thing that happened. The major bad thing that happened is that any magic scrolls within 10 feet of him would be rendered non-magical.
Ooh.
Some of those I rolled, and that one I picked because a lot of the rest of them were like, healing doesn't work. Like, no, healing needs to work. In the fight against Vecna, that's a big thing. And then session 4, I mean, you pretty much saw everything. Originally,
we could have avoided the statue fight, couldn't we?
You could have avoided the statue fight. You were like one success away from avoiding it.
Yeah.
That was the most tense I've ever been. Just like, that
Oh, God,
counter
yeah.
on the screen.
Who
That counter on the screen.
Who did we blame for that? Because there was someone who messed up. I can't remember. It could have been me, but somebody really dropped the ball at the end.
I thought it was going to be me. I was the second from last roll, and managed to get through as yes. Oh, God, if you had a camera on at that point, you'd just be celebrating like nobody's.
In the original version of that fight, if it had happened earlier in the evening, and I'd thought, you were either going to fail this very quickly or it was going to succeed. It wasn't going to fail at the end. I was wrong. In the original version of the fight, there were going to be 2 statues. And it was originally going to be the Godcatcher and the Lady Dreaming. And then I thought, well, I've got to do a fight with the statues. I'll just do the fight with one of the statues. And so I left it with just the Lady Dreaming.
I will say, doing the whole sewer bit, I've never been so tense in my life, more for the sake that I didn't have anything good to roll with.
I will be honest, when I came up with that idea, I really didn't look at the characters and think, oh, here are things that they can all do.
And didn't you? What's the story of my character? Because was this because somebody couldn't make it, so you?
Oh yeah, so Goat, obsolete Goat, unfortunately got friend issues that caused him to have to drop out of the session that he was meant to be in, that session that he was meant to be in. And so I was basically like, a couple of people have dropped out. SOS, 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 Jeff, Sean, help. And I think actually Kiri wasn't supposed to be in that session originally as well. But Amy dropped out because of the panto that she's doing, and Goat dropped out because of a friend having a rough Christmas time, and didn't want to be left alone. He didn't want to leave them alone, and so it was like, oh, suddenly 2 people that were going to be in the finale are not here anymore. So that final fight was fun, wasn't it, guys?
What?
Yeah.
Can we talk about the statue fight first, though? Because that's just hilarious.
I mean, go ahead.
The statue fight was a lot of fun.
The statue fight, I like. The book specifically talks. The book that I had that was like, here's the ruined Forgotten Realms, the doomed Forgotten Realms, talks about the fact that Vecna is in Waterdeep, and Vecna has effectively taken over the Zentara, and sort of Manshoon is sort of the second in command, but is sort of left to be, left to think that he has a chance to take over from Vecna at some point, and left to think that at some point he's going to be able to sneak up on Vecna and stab him in the back. And Vecna's like, "Ah, yeah, funny story." And that the walking statues are walking around, and so it's like, obviously the fight, if you fail this like sneaking into the city approach, is going to be the walking statues. And so I looked up stat blocks, and there are surprisingly very few stat blocks for the walking statues of Waterdeep. And yeah, I don't think anybody expected anyone to ever try and trip them up. That's, I believe that's a new one on People, Jeff.
That's when there was a lot of discussion about, well, what advantage, disadvantage do you get? Because it's prone, but it's still like prone. It's still bigger than us.
It's
like,
still the Statue of Liberty.
yeah, it's you know.
I was tempted to suggest maybe we lily put it and just basically try and tie it into the ground.
I mean, you could have tried running away at that point, I guess. Like, it's got some pretty hefty movement because it's a giant statue, but it's still got to take its time to stand up. I mean, I guess one of the other options I could have done was Vecna comes and fights you in the street there. And sort of had the final fight with Vecna come to that place, but then also I had the phased fight with the different time spaces of the Yawning Portal.
Oh yes, the twisty one which loses its doors.
That was yeah, I don't know what happened with that one, because, well, one thing that happened with that is that on the Monday of the week of that game, I made the map of the Yawning Portal, the ruined map of the Yawning Portal that we saw, as the sort of the main fight area. I made it, and then I closed it, and I didn't save the raw map. And then on Tuesday of that week, I discussed with my brother, hey, so cool, I want to do a thing, and basically I'd watched a number of Matt Colville videos of him talking about, one, the history of Vecna, and who Vecna is, and how he would run Vecna, and one of him talking about the big bad guy in general. And one of the things that he said is that as well as having the fight with the big bad guy, is he likes to sort of put a ticking clock on the fight. And so there is a thing that is happening there that, as well as it just being the fight with you and this guy, there is a reason that it has to be here and it has to be now. And there has to be a, you know, you don't just go, oh, we're losing, let's go.
Oh, we'll wait for 20 more guys to show up who can help us.
Yeah, we'll wait for, you know, Summit Hall to send some knights in, or, you know... So you sort of set up this ticking clock, this crystal that's glowing, or this ritual that's happening, or this thing that is occurring. And so I said to my brother, like, I want to do this, what do you think it can be? And we basically went back and forth on it, and we came up with the idea of the timey-wimey chart, or the time trouble chart, as I eventually named it, so that it wasn't just the timey-wiminess thing that occurs, which was the dice roll that you guys made at the start of each round of combat.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
My original idea, and my brother talked me out of it, was that you would roll it and it would affect the next person. And my brother basically said, that's just going to annoy everyone.
Yeah.
Should have done it though.
Yeah.
But to be fair, that is the doable annoyance, I think, you know.
And as I've said, like 60% of that is like it's 40-10-40 or 40-20-40. 20% of it is neutral stuff, and then it's 40% positive, 40% negative. Because there's, on that table, 1 to 6 on the D20, nothing happened. Legitimately just nothing happens. 7 to 8, the character that rolled it and anyone within 10 feet of them teleports 20 feet. In a random direction. Each person rolls a d8, and basically starting with 1 as north, basically that group of people within 10 feet scatter 20 feet throughout, and maybe end up like 40 feet away from each other and have to charge back in to fight again, or, oh, actually I'm going to fight someone else now because I'm closer to this guy.
Yep.
Then it was, you were affected by the slow spell. Then it was you just randomly healed. Effectively, you got a Cure Light Wounds, or Cure Wounds at lowest level. Then there were the 2 ways that you could affect the phase of the battle map, which was you could roll a d4 to move it forward or a d4 to move it backwards a phase.
Interesting.
And I sort of, when I was going over this and checking my working out with this with Sean, it was a d4, but there were 5 segments of the chart, so that the first person who rolled a d4 couldn't trigger a movement of the phasing. So that you'd just get this clock up and you'd see a thing and you'd look at it and you go, what the hell does that mean?
Yeah.
And then ideally, you know, there's not that many phases, and if you moved it forward or backwards from the furthest end phases, it wouldn't go any further either way. Then there was the one that got rolled an awful lot throughout the fight, which was you got affected by a first level inflict wounds spell.
Is this where you kept on scrabbling to try and come up with reasons why we would suddenly get
Which
wounded?
was basically, yeah, where the Orient Express ran one of you over, where the Lightning Rail ran somebody else over from Eberron, where I think, Jeff, you just Looney Tunesed into a chasm at one point.
Yeah.
And then the
I
last
like that
one on...
because I did like that though because it gave you the idea like that time really was utterly screwed.
Oh god, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that was
I'm
kind
absolutely
of the idea
stealing
with
the
it.
hit by a train one. Like when there's no trains, no tracks, nothing. Hit by train. I'm stealing
I
that.
was going to say also, you end up with that sort of character confusion in that moment as well.
Yeah, like
The
that.
hell
That
just
was,
happened there?
that was the whole. The table just says the character suffers 3d10 force damage. After I said somebody got hit by a train, it was then like, well, I guess I got to come up with something for everybody else.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, if someone else had just been hit by, you take 3d10, it'd be
I can't.
Or
I
get hit
can't
by
just.
giant boulder or something.
I think the first one that came up was just. I think Jeff. I just described it as like old wounds reopened.
I remember that one. Yeah.
That was the same thing. It was like, that's 3d10. It's time weirdness. Old wounds, just like, I've healed this. Shit. And then there was
Thank
haste.
God it wasn't anything like a broken leg. That would be just.
I do remember a Batman fan fiction that I read. That's quite a good one. There was this is like going slightly, but it's the same sort of thing. But he was fighting like some sort of wizard guy or magical guy, and one of the spells or one of the effects was that all Batman's old wounds came back.
Oh, geez, that's a lot.
All the
I
way.
see Robot Chicken's version of that, where all his wounds come back, he just get Bane.
And as he's going through this, he suddenly realizes what's going to happen, and then Bane happens again, basically.
You were just watching. I wouldn't do anything.
So one of the
Sorry,
things...
Would it be his psychological wounds as well? Because he suffered various
It's a
serious
lot
trauma.
of those.
Yeah.
I think his back.
double
I think it-
Batman.
I think his back breaking again would be a big one, though.
The only thing that you guys didn't really encounter in that final fight was that you started off at, so the map phases, the starting fight was happening in phase 3 of the map, and there was phases 4 and 5 which sort of got better and back towards the normal yawning portal. But then there was a phase 2 that you didn't see where it was more ruined and there was more fires and more blood and more piles of corpses around. And then phase 1, where I literally just went into Photoshop and tore the map apart and sort of put it on floating islands with seams of void stuff throughout the middle of the map. And basically, if you had rolled it so that it got back to phase 1 and any of the characters had been stood where there was a seam of the map, I allowed a DC 12 dexterity check, or you took damage as you were briefly exposed to void particles from the void between worlds. 66 points of damage.
Jeez, that's nice.
So
Wow.
that's the adventures.
I do have to ask, when it came down to that final battle, considering that you've already said that you tend to try and plan around and you get a rough idea of what people are going to be like and what they're going to do and all that sort of thing. Did that go anywhere near what you were originally planning for it to go? Or did it sort of go off the cuff very quickly and you just sort of had to make do? Or try and figure out as you carried on?
I gotta say, I thought the other monsters that were in that area were going to be a lot more of a threat than they were.
Yeah, I must admit, I just ran round them.
I didn't expect the group to so quickly just go straight for Vecna. I thought that was very good use of a couple of characters to sort of lock down going in MMORPG terms, lock down the ads, like lock down the additional monsters in that space, allowing, I think, mostly just the two of you, wasn't it? It was largely you and Stolen to just get in and deal with Vecna. I think Keros a couple of times kept trying to get in there and help with the Vecna fight, and just kept being
getting blocked,
dragged away by the other monsters. That was a voiceless talker artillerist that you were fighting for the most part there, Jeff, who basically had the ability of a psionic rifle.
Ooh.
And then with their psionic rifle, which has 150 feet to 600 feet max range attack, if they hit you with it, they can attempt to teleport the target. The target needs to make a DC 17 wisdom saving throw, or be teleported to an unoccupied space within 60 feet of the artillerist.
Keros is never going to make that same throw. Because my original plan for that was when I think it was either Milo or one of the other characters started on about throwing like haste around. I thought, good, I'll get haste and then just like get right in there. But then I got teleported away before I could do anything about that.
Yeah, I think I cast haste on the guy with the Sword of Kaz.
Yeah,
you cast
Kiri
haste on
stolen.
Yeah.
And I was like, saying like, no, Milo cast haste on me. But then I got teleported away before that happened.
One of the things that I didn't expect, and I changed sort of the day of the fight sequence, was originally that was going to be Vecna and the voiceless ones and the hulking brains, and that was it. And then a new packet of flea mortals monsters came out. And one of the new monsters was Time Raiders. And I was just like, these are called Time Raiders, and this is a time travel map. Like, Matt Colville, are you just gifting me these things? Like, this is perfect timing. And so that's where the big guy with the armor on, he had an interesting couple of things. He had a psychic power called Invigorated March that allowed him to cause other Time Raiders within 60 feet of him to use their reaction to move up to half their speed.
Okay.
He had an ability called Split Space, where he could just make a portal that went to somewhere else.
Interesting.
And he also had a reaction titled Kinetic Defense Field. When another medium or smaller creature that it can see within 120 feet of it takes damage, the damage is reduced by 15. As it basically just goes, force field. And then the Time Raider Nemesises wielded the giant golden scythes.
Oh, yeah.
All the Time Raiders had an ability called Psychic Scar, which means they are immune to any effect that would sense their emotions, read their thoughts, reveal if they are lying, or reveal their alignment or location. So, like, I don't think anybody in the group had those abilities, but if they did, they wouldn't be of any use against those monsters. But yeah, look out for those guys again at some point soon, probably.
I think one of the, now saying what you said, like over the whole thing of that, one of my favorite things, like, no, so saying that originally me and Kiri weren't supposed to be in that session.
No.
I just love it because it gave rise to one of my favorite bits of all time when me and Kiri are up against the statue. It's attacking us, and we're both trying to trigger our sentinel abilities without realizing.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that is one of the reasons that you weren't supposed to both be there, is that you both had Sentinel. I like looking back at it with the group that was originally supposed to be there. I don't know who would have been the best person to wield the Sword of Kaz. It would probably have been probably actually Goat or Richard.
I'd have taken it.
I'd have definitely placed it onto anyone else.
But I think definitely like having Kiri there with Stolen, like he was the obvious person to wield the Sword of Kaz. And sort of as soon as he pulled out, because he was originally supposed to be in the second session, he was supposed to go to Chult, and then he was going to be in the third session, collecting the sword. And he then pulled out of the second one, and I was like, could you be in the fourth one? Like, if you're not here for the second one, can you drop into that one instead and just be there for the ending so that you've got 2 games? Was my main thought, was like, we'll shuffle it around, you've got 2 games in it, and then afterwards it was like, well, now he makes the perfect person to wield the Sword of Kaz because he's a fighter, and like that is perfect. So I've got a few character things of Easter eggs that I put into character backstories to go over, and then I can answer questions. Goat's character, who we never met, was going to be a pirate. And at one point, the third session was going to feature Shan playing a version of Pyrolis who had been a sailor, and this other character who had been a pirate, and Keros, who's very tied to the seas. And I was like, this is getting very nautical. But Goat's character, I'd given him the option of playing a number of characters that he could have generated or made, or this pirate who had been a pirate on the seas until a certain flying castle arrived and whisked him away to the astral sea. And basically, one of my early thoughts for the character that I was going to give Richard was basically that fighter that you had played in the Strahd Must Die game.
Yeah. It's one of my favourite characters, that one.
And then I realised I don't have that character sheet anymore. I don't know why I don't have that character sheet anymore. I guess at some point I got rid of that character, and I don't know why, because I've got unlimited character slots on D&D Beyond.
I think I played it so well. You had to like retire it, like when they retire a number. Like, I believe this is a sports thing, and you were like, well, no one's going to top that.
I had thought about like just messaging you and seeing, because I think you had a printout of it for when we played it. I was like, I could message and ask, but that sort of gives away what the character is. I don't want to do that. And so basically I was like, well, I want to, I'm going to highlight that, and I'm going to have that as a thing that is in the backstory that Goat can talk about if he wants to. That he was in this group of spell jamming pirates who flew around in Castle Strahd, and it will be a reference that no one will get because it was a game that wasn't streamed and just happened live, but I enjoy those references.
Oh,
I
it's
did like-
good.
I did like the way you did it. Like, when we told us, like, saying I can't tell you who it is, but it's this class, and I never realised it's going to be our old characters coming back.
I yeah, I really enjoyed, like, when I told Tanny who they were playing, and they were like, I'm gonna be a rogue. It could be Milo, but it can't be Milo because Milo wasn't just a rogue. And I was like, Azura, which was the name I came up with, or somebody came up with, or I got from a name generator, one of those, for Rogue's Dragonborn monk. I put in his backstory that he had met a mysterious traveller, a red-scaled Dragonborn by the name of Inti. Who had taught him the basics of being a monk. And that he had
How is Michael? How is Michael these days?
As far as I know, he's doing okay. He's doing cosplaying stuff still. Last time I saw him was May MCM. I believe he was...
He was on a stall, one of the
he was on a trading card stall at May MCM last year. I believe he was not at October MCM because he was at a wedding for a friend.
Yeah.
The hazards of being the social butterfly, Michael. But then I also threw in that Azura had travelled the Swords Coast seeking wisdom from a variety of sources, including lost temples to Akkadi, which is a reference to Hau from Golden Tooth. Akkadi is the god of the wind that Hau worshipped. Ruined monasteries to the dragons, which is a reference to Rogue's character in Dungeon of the Mad Mage. And speaking to the ancient grandfather tree, which is a mysterious and ancient magical tree that the Storm King's Thunder group met once. So he had a lot of references in his backstory. So now I'm going to say, do you guys, or you guys in the chat, I don't really know where to point to the chat, I guess over there. Do you three, or anyone in chat, have any questions about the things that we did, how I wrote things, any other notes that I might have, anything else you wish to just say about?
I'll come back to a point which you mentioned beforehand, which is you said that Safe was one of the hardest ones to make. How or why was it so hard to make Safe into the character that Safe is?
So once I had the thought of who you were going to be, it was quite easy. The complex part was working out who you were going to be. Because my initial thing was like, we've brought back Riordan after Tomb of Annihilation. We've given him sort of the happy ending. I know that we've given a number of those characters sort of their happy endings, and now I've brought them back, and now I've given them the happy ending again. But it was like, I don't want to just bring Riordan back and do something different with his backstory or have him be a different class. And then it was trying to work out, is there something I can do with another character that you've had? Is there a one-shot character you've played that I could bring back? And then I was like, I don't want to bring back Gorley and have it that Gorley won it. So it was like, and sort of at that point of like, I don't want to bring Gorley back and say that Gorley won it. Wait a minute. And then it just sort of clicked that, like, in this world, Gorley and Riordan effectively died in the sealing process, and Safe now has sort of the frame of Riordan, but he's alone in there, and he's the one that's like, he's now sort of dealing with the fact that his actions caused the loss of Riordan. And so it was sort of a guilt-driven Safe was sort of my original thought, was like, he's you know, not just Safe as pure entity of the angel from heaven, and that partially the reason he was he was an angel from heaven, and therefore he was the Aasimar instead of elf stats. And sort of why he became the Sun Soul sorcerer, or Sun Soul monk, instead of Way of the Drunken Master, because obviously Riordan became Way of the Drunken Master because he was drinking to suppress Safe and Gawley, to an extent Safe, but mostly Gawley, I believe, was the intention.
That was the intention, yeah.
And Safe probably wouldn't have fallen to alcohol.
No,
I didn't think, regardless of how guilty he felt. But like, once I had that idea, the thought of it, it came quite easily, and like a lot of the characters, it did come quite easily together as to who they were and what they came from, and everything. Like, oh, let's bring back Keros. Like, Keros was an interesting character who we played with for a while. There are still questions there. Like, his story is not necessarily done. With Melisandre, I gave Richard a choice. Melisandre was one character that I generated that was basically using... When I spoke with Sian about making Pyrolis to replace Nephirin, I asked Sian what they would like to do, and she wanted to play a character who was the tank of the group. But not just, I want to be a barbarian or just a paladin. I want to be something interesting. And I looked up interesting tank builds for D&D. And I came up with the build that Melisandre has. Which is basically paladin crossed with warlock, because they both rely on charisma, and mean that you can have a charisma spellcaster with a weapon that comes off of your charisma that you can summon to your hand at will, that acts as a +1 weapon on its own, unless you focus on a magical weapon that is greater than a +1. You have just a +1 weapon that you can walk around completely unarmed and then just go, ha-ha, sword.
I love that.
What would happen if they end up focusing on, like, the Sword of Cass?
He would have been able to, like, put the Sword of Cass away in a multi-dimensional space, and then just Sword of Cass.
Yeah. Which would have been mint in a fight with Vecna, where you just like, oh, you guys have got no chance, and it's
but then the stage further than we went with Pyrolis, sort of the stage closer to darkness, the stage closer to sort of where Melisandre became different to Pyrolis, is that there was a level of sorcerer. And with Shadow Sorcerers get an ability called a thing. Not Cling to Life. Strength of the Grave, I believe it is.
yeah, it was pretty hard to kill, I think, if I remember right.
Yeah, not easy to get you down. Yeah, Strength of the Grave. When you take damage, if it isn't radiant or from a critical hit that reduces you to 0, you make a Charisma saving throw. DC is 5 plus the damage you have taken. If you succeed on that saving throw, you drop to 1 hit point. So effectively, the first time you get dropped to 0, you make a saving throw, and you can potentially not. The other part of that is that I gave you... Melisandre was a hollow one.
Yeah.
Which is basically a risen, fully conscious undead. But because they're undead, they have an ability called Cling to Life. When you're making death saving throws, if you roll 16 or higher, you restore 1 hit point. So instead of having to get a nat 20 to come back from a death save, you just have to roll a 16 or greater.
Interesting.
It was a great character. Like, just looking through it, looked loads of fun.
The other option I did give Richard was I had made one of Warrington's crew as a potential character to play at some point, which was Horatio, a GIF Echo Knight, which is a fighter subclass from the Explorer's Guide to Wildmount that allows you to summon a shadow duplicate of yourself and effectively have sort of the cleric ability of invoke duplicity, but as a fighter, with the ability for you to sort of swap between, you know, you being the clone, like being where the clone is or being where you are, and sort of make attacks from this clone who is not necessarily a shadow clone, but sort of is meant to be you, but from another timeline.
See, I hadn't realised a GIF was a space hippo. I thought I was thinking GIF Yankee. And
Yeah.
if I'd realised I had the potential to play a space hippo who could be like 2 of them at the same time, I may have picked space hippo. But
I think Melisandre worked really well, though.
I like playing Melisandre, yeah.
Stanza has asked, what was my favourite bit? Or what was your favourite bit? Which I guess we can all answer that. My personal favourite bit was the bit that I knew was going to be the best, which is when Tanny definitely realised that they were Milo. Like, as soon as the spire sort of shuddered back together again, and the message occurred, the Jeff's message occurred, I was like, that's the bit I've been waiting for. Oh, feed me your angst. So what was your guys' favourite bits?
I have said it, but the statue fight, just for the sheer ridiculousness of what happened.
I really liked... Oh, sorry.
You go ahead. You go.
Okay. So when we... The guy we fought at the end of the second one, you know...
Syriac.
Him. I remember there was a lot of business of, like, everyone crowded in trying to fight him, and then a lot of sort of thing going, oh, I'm going to cast this thing, now we'll get all of you. Sorry about that. But I'm going to do it anyway. And it was just... and I was like one because I think there was like a radius, wasn't there, as we approached it. And everyone sort of waited. I think 2 people, I think Ben was one of them, for like, oh, I'm gonna go through. So when the fight started, it was like they were like 60 odd feet ahead of us. And everyone else had to sort of go, oh crap, and try and run in to catch
I'm
up.
sorry, I was playing a monk with glass cannons.
I really didn't expect you to sort of hang back at the edge of that light. Like, nothing happened if you went into it. Like, if you got close enough to the light, I think you had to be within about 15 feet, and you had to be trained in Arcana, something could happen. Or if you touched the orb, which Ben and I think it was Rogue probably did.
Maybe.
Yeah.
So both of the monks. There's something happened again there, and you both succeeded in the saving throws against it.
Oh god.
Phil, you may have said this already, but what was the hardest bit, and what would you change if you did this again? And one thing I'd love to change if I did this again was not be sick for 2 weeks of it. But I mean, that's not really in the plotline. I think some of the things like a Syriac starting off so close to the temple that you guys bum rushed in and made that weird sort of bottleneck for yourselves would have been better if I'd done that he came further out before the fight started.
To be fair, I think that kind of worked in our favour to a degree, because you end up thinking about an actual fight. You kind of want to keep your opponent in a location. If they're in a bottleneck, okay, we can focus in on one. We let him get out, he could go anywhere.
Possibly not have you have that fight with the king in feathers first. I mean, actually, to be fair, both of the times that you had massive fights before the big main fight of the session, the fight with the statue and the fight with the undead Tyrannosaurus Rex, I think would have been better if we'd not had those be the thing and you had shorter encounters. And so you'd had more time to focus on the main fight of the session. Those are the things I'd like to change.
To be fair, though, they were incredibly dynamic and amazing fights to go through in the middle.
This is true.
They were very enjoyable.
Especially when it came down to the statue, the fact that it came from a point of we are trying desperately not to be heard or seen, and it's a flump, and it's like, oh no, we need to now sort this. You couldn't have asked for a better setup.
Like, wasn't it like smashing the ceiling in, like where we were, like in the sewer, and it was like breaking in. Yeah, like that was
the whole idea of that fight. The description of it was, you cannot hide in this situation anymore. Like you've called this down on you. Like they've spotted you that you're coming. The ceiling is collapsing in because this thing is getting so close. Like the idea was throughout that you heard like the boom, boom, boom of the footsteps of the thing in the distance, and now it was coming closer and the ceiling was actually collapsing in. So yeah.
I was going to say, that part was beautifully narrated and beautifully put together.
Thank you.
As I say, it was an interesting one going through the sewers. As I say, I don't know if anyone else had this thing of, oh God, what can I do? What can I do? I mean, you had to come to you had to save me from that one, John.
I honestly had a really hard time of coming up with a list of what my list of things was. Because I did have, I obviously had the list of, here are the things that I can think of off the top of my head. Stealth, survival, you guide the people along the path. Animal handling, you spot some sewer rats and you convince them to move.
I must say, there's one
I forgot about the rats.
Rats are
When it
hilarious.
came down to this, is probably the first time I've had this quite a character which is so blah and even throughout the entire stat block when it came down to all the skills.
He is so average at things.
Really go, oh God, what can I do? Because obviously my thought at that point, and what I loved about it was a team thing, and you're like, you don't want to ruin it for your team, and it's like, my turn's gonna come up soon. I need to do something here.
I was trying really hard to come up with ideas that weren't just, we make 12 stealth checks.
Oh God, yeah.
Or we just do a number of stealth checks as you go through.
As I say, that sewer section is the way to handle that kind of situation. It's not all about the stealth side of it. It's not all about that. It's about people being able to use their skills in the best way that they can.
Yeah.
To to make things move forward, and it becomes a team event at that point. It really does sort of lock you into the situation. As I said, I was tense in it. I loved that section.
I ran a
hated it.
skill check once on a game I ran, and it was like they were running away from the bad guy, and it was through a busy city. So it was like, oh well, I forced my way through using strength, and I said, oh, you can use spells, you can do anything like that. And someone said, oh, I cast there was an illusion to make it look like there was loads of cows in the street.
Right.
So everyone was like, get out, trying to get away, and they just ran straight through them because of an illusion. And then someone said, oh, well, I'm going to disguise self as the farmer trying to get his cows back. And it just kept getting like more ridiculous. Like, it was not like, it wasn't like I cast fireball or I cast, it was just like these things of like silly. I mean, it was one step, having like, oh, the guy with the crates of chickens and the carrying the glass across the street type thing.
I mean, I think the biggest problem I had with it was it was such an obviously stealth thing that obviously like the main focus of it is moving quietly through the sewers, and that's all done with stealth. And it's like, what are the other things that you can do that contribute to this challenge?
Honestly, the amount of times where, it's a difficult thing to do. I mean, I've done something similar to it before in a live game of Princes of the Apocalypse, where I had one of the areas basically, the magic field is going to be coming. If you don't get out now, you're going to get trapped.
Yeah.
Playing on the whole thing when it came down to the Fire Temple, where I let them in, but then they recognize, and basically sort of playing around the whole thing of it being open and closed. So if they close it, you're stuck and you have no way. You need to get out before anything
You need to
else
get
happens.
out now.
And obviously that in itself says, okay, this is now a dexterity thing. You are rolling for your life to try and run out as quick as you can. But once again, not everyone is made for the whole dexterous side of things. So you're trying to play it up. Okay, you got some people who are running ahead and sort of seeing which ways are clear and all that sort of thing. Then giving the bruises. And effectively, I end up playing it out a little bit more to not entirely play to the character's skill, but where they've got a better chance than not playing at all. Because it's once again, you get a person who's a paladin and all this sort of thing, trying to be dexterous and swift around corners. It's never going to work. But you throw in a section that there's a pillar coming down and you need to do something to stop it. Otherwise, this is going to cause a big problem. And all of a sudden, you've now got the person, I can hold it, I can do that, I can smash it, I can... And you can see the light in their eyes, and that's one of those bits which I think you just love and you go for. And it is the whole thing of taking a section which is obviously designed for one thing, but by throwing a time limit and all that sort of things and making it feel a lot more constricted, it can make things a lot more interesting to open it up to different areas if you can think of a different way to do something.
Yeah.
But as you say, trying to come up with options for people is a different matter entirely.
Any other questions? Also, Stanza says, yes, the cows and farmers.
Well, yes, because Stanza was in that game. With her brilliant Kitsune character, Silpha, whose coffee shop I burnt down.
Why am I not surprised?
I do have a question for you. Considering you did say that you moved Vecna from where he was originally meant to turn up, where you were originally meant to fight him, and changed it so it'd be a bit more of an elaborate story. Was there a lore reason why you chose the Yawning Portal for the final fight with Vecna?
No. It was the Yawning Portal because that's a recognizable place that you'd been in Waterdeep that Vecna could have been using for this ritual. Arguably, it could have taken place in the Spires of the Morning. It could have taken place... Heck, it could have taken place in Trollskull.
Yeah.
Like, the Trollskull Tavern map could have been really interesting with this timey-wimey changing of where it largely...
He's upstairs! No, he's gone down now.
He's over all 4 floors! No, there wasn't a reason why it was the Yawning Portal other than it's a recognizable place, and I wanted the final fight with Vecna to be in a place that you guys would recognize, and not just like, and now you're in Temple number 3. How do Vecna and the Mad Mage feel about each other?
I was gonna say, that's a good question.
I feel that at that point in the timeline, Hallister would have just like yeeted himself out of Undermountain and would be off somewhere else on another plane, setting up a new dungeon, because he's not going to get on with Vecna. So either, I mean, Vecna. I don't think Vecna would have taken the time to go down and deal with Hallister, so I think Hallister would have gotten away. If Vecna had decided to, he would have been able to deal with Hallister, because of the power level difference there. But I think that basically Hallister sort of heard word of what was happening and was like, peace, I'm out, and left. And if you guys had descended into the Yawning portal, you would have just found sort of an empty, not necessarily empty dungeon, because obviously something's going to move in and fill it, but you wouldn't have found Hallister at the end of it.
Okay. If you were to go with the concept of playing forward with the multiverse versions of Vecna playing around, where would you place this Vecna on the scale of Vecnas?
On the scale of 1 to Vecna, the
Plectron!
The Vecna that you fought wasn't as powerful as the Vecna that Vox Machina fought.
Okay.
That Vecna that they fought at the end of their season 1 was a god. I don't think this Vecna had achieved that level of power yet. If you had, like, if the group had been later, if the group had been, like, if the group got stuck and had to do another, like, we'd had to do another session or 2 of it, you might have fought a much more powerful Vecna. There were definitely some characters that I had planned that you could have fought that would have been a lot more powerful than ones that you did fight. There was at one point I had the rule stats for Zariel, just on the off chance that maybe in in Zariel's Citadel you would have fought Zariel, Lord of Avernus. I also had, and this is a reference for Goat, I had Nagaya, which is one of Goat's homebrew creations of a demon lord, or I guess demon lady. The mother of monsters and the parent of oh god, one of the gods. Who would have been also in Heldor's Gates episode, the 3rd episode, as a potential, like, those were both sort of, if that game was going to go for a big final boss fight moment, those would be the contenders for what that boss was going to be. And as soon as as soon as Goat initially said I might not make it tonight, I stopped working on getting a token ready for Nagaya. But Zariel, I believe I had the token all prepared for. I had the token prepared for Zariel.
I was going to ask John, because in a bunch of games I've run, I've managed to insert Strahd.
Right.
I just like open up with things. So, like, I ran a Ravenloft sort of game, and the players were getting bounced about the realms, and they ended up having dinner with Strahd. I was wondering if there was any point that he would have entered this as a potential bad guy to fight.
If we'd had more time,
a good guy.
if we'd had more time, there's no reason he couldn't have entered as either a villain to fight at the end of one of the sections. He could have very easily, actually, if things had gone slightly differently, he could have been the person holding the Sword of Kaz at this time and been sort of the guardian of the Sword of Kaz instead of it being in Heldor's Gate. Although also, Strahd has died recently in this world, apparently, because a certain pirate has his castle now.
Yep.
So, I mean, as we know with the Vampire Lord, they always come back. But he might be significantly weaker if his castle is currently still out there in realm space flying around pirate shipping. So... But also, yeah, he might have taken a stand against Vecna, and it could have been an interesting sort of uneasy ally moment. Would it spoilers to ask about Tiamat? I mean, in theory, yes, it would spoilers to ask about Tiamat. In the scenario, in the descriptions of how Vecna took over, one of the things that the group loses Tyranny of the Dragons. And Tiamat is summoned to the world, but basically Vecna steals an amount of the treasure, which is supposed to, according to the law of the Doomed Forgotten Realms, include the 4 magical weapons that the prophets of the elemental cults use to summon the elemental princes. And so basically Tiamat, I believe it talks about Tiamat being summoned and then sort of pushed aside in much the same way that Tharizdun is sort of locked away. Vecna sort of just like deals with these problems of, you're too big, go over there, be a problem somewhere else. You're like, cool, go away.
Ooh. Does that mean that potentially there could be another storyline with these characters again, facing everything that Vecna has pushed aside, now coming back?
I mean, there is an argument
Give him ideas. Don't give him ideas.
There is an argument to be made that there could be another Christmas special where you've got to go and meet with Tiamat and Strahd and the elemental princes and convince them all to come and fight Vecna with you. Yeah, tune in next year, says Stanza.
No, tune in before then.
Yeah, watch this space in the meantime. So I think now is the time that we're going to stop the questions. And I've got a little bit of a in terms of video game nomenclature, this is a cutscene. This is This is a scenario that the players, the characters, don't know about. But for those of you that are here, here's another scene that takes place sometime after that flash to white and Vecna, the timeline reset, and Milo and Borrowed woke up in their tavern, and the rest of the world got on with either dealing with the strange group of people that are delving into the Dungeon of the Mad Mage over and over again, or the characters up in Icewind Dale dealing with the everlasting winter. Elsewhere in the Forgotten Realms, on Toril, in North Faerun, the town of Silvery Moon, dubbed the Gem of the North, is a fairly large town, city, on the banks of the river that flows through the centre of town, crossed by the Moon Bridge, which, after many centuries of having been lost, the ancient Mythal reawoke, and Silvery Moon became the centre of magic study of this ancient magical artifact. A number of educational establishments, libraries, and a university have opened in Silvery Moon, including a multi-dimensional library run by a group known as the Cobalt Soul. There is an ancient elven museum or library carved into the center of a tree in the town, where a previous adventurer, now retired, travels the land Kandra was raised. More recently in Silvery Moon, scandal has rocked the upper echelons of society as a prominent businessman has been hauled away by representatives of the Lord's Alliance under evidence of slavery. Outlawed in Toril, slavery carries a heavy burden, and this man is unlikely to be seen again for a number of years. And on the banks of the river, just after the sky turns white and the flash clears from your eyes, Melisandre, you awaken in a world that looks familiar, but ever so slightly different. You open your eyes and you look around and you see a Silvery Moon populated. People walk the streets. The lights, regardless of day or night, it is currently early evening and magical lanterns have started to glow along the streets, and people travel through the town unimpeded by the darkness. the main building in the centre of town, you look up and you expect to see the roiling cage that held Tharizdun, but it isn't there. You find yourself in a new world, and a voice speaks in the back of your head. I'm not done with you yet. Rise, Melisandre. Do you wish to say anything to this voice?
What do you want me to do?
For now I am weak. But you spread the word, and I will grow again.
It will be done.
Tell them the angel in irons sent you.
I will.
And Melisandre sets out into the golden timeline. Warlock patron of Tharizdun. And that was a little element of the backstory that nobody ever picked up on.
Well, that makes things interesting.
Gotta get some leaflets made.
Epic jazz.
You have a moment
Warlock.
to do. You have a moment to talk about.
Yeah. Have you heard the terrible news about
I have,
the Angel and I?
I have many names.
Yeah, the
One of them
leaflets,
is
just
Keith.
all the names.
Spread the word of the angel in irons, the elder elemental eye, Nyarlathotep. Keith. I'm not proud of that last one.
Well, maybe it's a really cool name where he's from. It's like all the badass people are called Keith.
You can imagine that, can't you? You've got Cthulhu, Azathoth, Nyarlathotep, and Keith.
Yeah. And they're all like, shit, don't mess with Keith. He's the bad one.
I mean, he apparently must be in that bit where they just kind of like the things that man's not meant to know. Like they just kind of round off the edges of. They don't tell us about Keith.
And who would tell you
Keith,
about Keith?
Keith's the avatar that he just like nobody likes.
So, yeah, Melisandre is now in the golden timeline, and Tharizdun may have been defeated, but he's not gone.
Oh, God.
Oh,
the amount of things that we created for Tharizdun that we never got to use, really, that could come back. Oh, God.
we have long memories and deep pockets, and
We do.
some of us do.
Yeah, some of us do. One day for you, Jeff. One day for you.
So I think that's the end of the stream. I think that's a good thing to end on. So
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's all of the Easter eggs and references that I know of that we missed, all of the encounters that you skipped or got round or didn't have time for. Literally, actually, there is a note that I made on the Rumble in the Jungle Crossing Omu dice list that was aim to have them make 3 dice rolls or finish at 9:30.
You know, that's just my note for every day night anyway.
So, all that it remains for me to say is thank you guys so much for watching. If you haven't done so already, please give us a follow. It's a great way for you to know when we go live, and a completely free way that you can support us. If you have Amazon Prime, you get 1 free subscription a month, and you can give it to your favourite streamer. Would like it to be us, but give it to whoever you wish. Just don't leave it with Jeff Bezos, he has enough money. We have a YouTube channel where you will see this and videos of the other streams we do, including going up live at the moment on Tuesdays. It's going to be Reign of the Whispered One. So if you're watching this live and you missed Reign of the Whispered One, why are you watching this? This is a really weird thing to watch without having watched that first. But you can go back and watch Reign of the Whispered One. Push the subscribe button over there and ding the bell to see when new uploads go live. We also have a Discord you can join and chat to us about this, or any of the other streams, or games in general, or whatever takes your fancy. I'm not your dad to tell you what to talk about.
Damn it.
Links can be found below or in any of our YouTube videos, or you can find links to that and many more things over at finalbossfight.co.uk. How's that for the new outro, Jeff?
That sounds good, yeah.
Some ad-libbing in there. I think we need to throw a little ad-libbing.
Professional.
I don't think
Professional
anyone
level.
noticed. It's fine, yeah.
But we're going to go over and look at the streams that are coming up. As soon as I can see the button for it, there's the button. Tomorrow night, there's no stream. But on Tuesday, I will be back with more Norse adventures with God of War. On Wednesday, we are starting Minecraft Wednesdays.
What?
Midweek Minecraft.
No, what happened to that? Why?
Which we have now named Midweek Minecraft. We get the double M.
Mid-fuck.
But why would you do that? Why?
We've done it because Mondays are going to be a new stream thing.
Oh.
So stay tuned for that. On Thursday, over on the Angel Games Player channel, Angel will be playing some Genshin Impact. On Friday, Jeff has fun with trains.
Oh yes, we're back. Well, it's been a while since we had got Foreign Orient Express due to various illnesses, various other things. But
Illnesses
yes, we're back.
and Christmas.
Yep, the investigators are currently riding a very different sort of express, the Dreamlands Express, as they get to grips with this new reality, new people, and an old friend that they've met on the journey as well. I don't know if you know this, Richard, but Henri's back.
Dun, dun, dun.
Henri
Did
Peters
not know
is back.
that.
On Saturday next week, it is the FBF quiz night. So join, hopefully, these guys.
No, I'm not feeling like it.
and Rogue and Angel as we start off January with... Well, Rogue has given us a round on Imperial Rome.
Ooh.
And then I've written rounds on classic Doctor Who,
Ooh.
Science and Nature,
Mm.
and then a round entitled Backbench MP or Dickens Character.
That's amazing.
Which I have taken from the Have I Got News For You quiz of 2022. Wherein I will tell you some names and you have to tell me if they are backbench MPs or Dickens characters.
This is going to be hilarious either way.
And then I also have for you guys, after the quiz night next week, one, quiz nights are going to move to the third Saturday of the month from February, instead of the second. But that'll be good because it gives you more time to do the homework I'm setting you, which is I've made a playlist for you to listen to, and I've got questions based on the musical songs that are in my playlist.
How many songs, John? How many songs?
It's not as long as your playlist you made me for for Riordan. It's not 8 hours, don't worry. But there are definitely some red herrings as to songs in there that I've just added that won't have questions, but are nice songs. But yeah, that's a February quiz. We'll have a round on musicals because I wanted to give you guys a chance to listen to the musicals and confirm that you had a chance to listen to the specific songs and possibly be able to answer the questions. And then next Sunday, a week from today, D&D returns to the channel. We'll be back with Dungeon of the Mad Mage. The group is still mostly on the surface and going to be dealing with all of the fallout, all of the emotional fallout of the last session, I'm sure, as well as possibly going to talk with Kandra again. And seeing if Kandra can provide any further answers to the group as to where they go next, or how redemption works.
How does that work?
It's a good question, isn't it? That's the wrong button. That's the right button. So that's it for the stream. Go do all those things we told you about previously, like following us and subscribing and Discords and YouTubes and Facebooks, and we do a podcast as well. You go and subscribe to that. Be cool. Gonna do a raid as soon as the raid button loads. Let us do a raid at Sumo Crafts, who is doing
Sea of Thieves?
crafting.
Oh.
Go give some love to Sumo, who is crafting a thing. I don't know what it is, because I'm not watching the stream at the moment. But go give them some love. We'll see you guys again real soon. For now, so long. Bye, guys.
Bye.